Part on our agenda today is a speed chat between our moderator, Famia, and also our board member at Chevs, Nana Dakoa, as they have a conversation around building collective power for justice in the next 20 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, Nana.
Thank you, Famia. Always good to be in conversation with you.
Always, I'm excited. So, Nana is a communication strategist, facilitator, writer with over 15 years of experience in the social justice and feminist space. And she is a Chevs board member. She runs organizations, a co-founder and co-director of the Institute for Journalism and Social Change, and also runs a consulting agency, Makeda PR. And I think as Chevs starts on this journey, Nana is a good person to hear from because she has a proven track record in this space of developing and delivering strategic comms for gender rights and LGBTI organizations. So we're really excited to talk to her and hear what she has to say. And Nana, I guess, yeah, what I wanted to know was, Chev's theme is building collective power for justice. And that's particularly salient now with shrinking civic space and government crackdowns in many West African countries and the surge of anti-rights actors, across the region. So what does collective power mean to you and what impact have you seen it have?
Thank you so much, Famia. I think collective power means exactly that, right? It's about people from various movements who focus on different issues, who come from different regions of, or if we're looking at the African continent, different sub-regions, who have different levels of expertise, who come from a range of sexualities, who cut across, the age span, coming together to achieve a common goal. And I think that's the really great thing about the work that Chevs does and the work that Chevs intends to do movement forward. I love that it's a dynamic young queer organization. And at the same time, it recognizes that in order to achieve its goals, it needs to harness the powers of everybody, including me, for example, even though I am definitely not youth, right? And so I think that's what collective power is about. It's about harnessing all our resources and recognizing that those resources go beyond money. Money is super important, but it goes beyond money. It's about our skills, our experiences, our energies, right? Yes, and harnessing all of that with the goal of creating a better world, which would benefit all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think particularly now that's so important. And particularly as we've seen this sort of wave of anti-rights legislation, particularly in West Africa and across the continent, collective power is more important than ever. Is there, sorry, continue.
I was going to say, I feel like this is one lesson that as feminist and queer movements, we actually need to learn from the anti-rights movement. They know how to harness collective power. They really know how to harness collective power because you can see alliances among like all of these anti-rights actors and you're like, oh, wow, on this issue, the Christians are with the Muslims, are with the young professionals, are with the random CEOs who have given corporate sponsorship. And you're like, well, what do they have in common? They have just this, sometimes just one issue that they all hate. And even though they have other things that divide them, they are somehow able to put the differences aside in furtherance of a particular goal, right? Say that goal is to pass anti-gay legislation in the country. They will come together. So I feel like as feminist and queer movements, these are the things that we need to do. I think it's important that we continue to talk about our issues, right? Because we are also trying, I think this is also part of the work of building a better world, not ignoring the issues that divide us. But how can we still move forward in spite of the issues that may divide us, in spite of the very legitimate, whatever those issues are, whether it's, and I'm giving this example because Chevs is a young example, whether it's feeling like old people hug the space and are not passing the mantle on, right? How can we harness our energies across our differences in furtherance of our goal of building a more just world?
I absolutely agree. It seems like the ops, like that's literally it. They have oppression in common and they are united across that goal of oppression. And they don't pay attention to the minute differences, to what they think of almost as cosmetic differences, but which seem to have so much more resonance and weight in social justice space. And I think that there is a lesson there for us to glean something from. What are some of the most effective ways that you've seen for forging alliances that actually endure and create lasting impact?
It's a hard question for me to answer right now. I think also because of where my head is. And you and I had a number of conversations about the US elections, right? And yesterday I was listening to this podcast episode. It's a podcast show called Tortoise. So they focus on, in a sense, doing slow news and analyzing. And the focus was on Elon Musk, who I have never really paid much attention to, right? But then, of course, we've seen how he has made such a huge difference to the results of the US election. And I was shocked to find out that a few years ago, he was actually a donor to the Democratic Party and actually spoke against Trump. So I'm like, oh, what changed, right? Suddenly they found something in common. And in a sense, he could ignore all of the things that he didn't have in common. So I think it's really about also trying to figure out, as various movements, as various feminist and queer movements, what is, is there a particular one goal that we can all work collectively towards, right? Even if we can't agree on everything else. And how do we do this with a broad range of social justice movements, whether these are movements that work on the union, on worker rights, for example, or movements that work on climate justice. I think you will find feminists and queer people in all of those movements, but you would also have folks in those movements who may not be feminist, who may not be queer, but is there enough for us to build on? And yeah, I'm kind of like, I guess, in a moment of feeling a little bit disheartened. So off the top of my head, I can't give you an example of a great feminist victory, which is just where I am right now. But I feel like we've all seen an example of a great anti-rights victory. And for me, I'm also interested in digging into that, even if that's not our context, even if that's not our African context, and seeing what other lessons we can learn from that.
No, I think I think one of the lessons that can be learned from that is that people are fueled by issues. Because you bring up Elon Musk, and I find that so fascinating because his radicalization to the right seems to have come from the fact that his daughter came out as trans. And it's clear it's a daughter from a first marriage. He was a neglectful parent, and his daughter's gender identity and gender journey has very little to do with him. But for some reason, he took it so personally that he has, quote unquote, lost a child, that it has fueled this desire to fund issues that are directly harmful to trans people or to what he sees as the trans agenda. And I think that that's something that I find interesting in just watching these anti-rights actors, that they get sort of radicalized for bad by singular events and put so much resources and so much vim towards, essentially curtailing other people's rights based on their human experiences. And I find that I don't see as much of that on our side, where people get radicalized by a single issue and then really sort of mobilize around it in the same way, And so I think you make some excellent points about the need to build, to build solidarity and see the commonalities and stuff. But you also mentioned money, and that is super, super important, in this fight against anti-rights activists trying to harness any kind of, collective power. Because you had an article, your institute, the Institute for Journalism and Social Change, had an article on CNN a couple of years ago that talked about the fact that there was this surge of funding from the US Christian right in anti-rights movements on the continent. And that's something we on the ground have definitely noticed. Like these ops are loaded, they are prepared, they have money, they have backing, and for all we talk about collective power and justice, that doesn't go very far if it's not driven by resource allocation, right? So how do organizations like Chevs get more donor dollars in? Because one of the things that is clear is that in all of the money that's allocated to LGBT rights across the continent, very little of it comes to West Africa. I think the last figure in 2022 was something like 1.6%, So how do organizations like Chevs get more donor dollars, get more donor interest? How does that happen?
I do want to talk about how do organizations like Chefs get more donor dollars. But I also want to go back to what you were saying before, right? About how a singular issue can, in a sense, radicalize someone for bad. I love that phrasing because I want to talk about how we can also radicalize for good. Because I think this is actually some of what feminists have been successful at doing, and we actually need to do more of. If I think of my own radicalization as a feminist, and I regard myself as a radical African feminist, okay, correction. Want to be radical African feminist, really. Those are my goals. I would love to be way more radical than I am. I think of reading books by the likes of Bell Hooks, and then later finding, the work of Amateidu because I was looking for something in my own context. And that definitely radicalized me. I would like to think for good, And I think how we radicalize for good is through our cultural production, through the books we write. And by books, I don't mean boring reports, right? I mean compelling stories, compelling fiction and nonfiction stories that depicts the world in the ways that we want to see it. I think that is a powerful way to radicalize for good. And I think it's something that as, feminist and queer movements, we need to do way more. So that's something I'll going to put on the table. Just to say for folks in the audience, you might want to put yourself on mute because we are hearing a lot of background. So if you're not on mute, or whoever's doing the tech might want to put people on mute. Okay, thank you. And then coming back to the question of, and I think the question was, how do youth organizations like Chefs get more money?
How do they bridge the resource gap? Because the ops have money. So how do the good people get money?
Yes, I know. We need to find more, I think, individually wealthy women, wealthy people to give us funding. I feel like historically, as feminist movements and as queer movements, we've relied on the progressive donors, mainly based in the US, who are cutting their funding, who are changing their focus, who in some cases are starting to work with the governments, the same governments who we find take away our rights. And I think, we need to actually figure out who are the individuals who can give us money, and who are willing to support us also because individual donations usually come with less strings attached. If you manage to get a couple of philanthropists who believe in your cause and are willing to give you the money, I think those come with less strings attached and less of the reports and requirements that often hamper people from doing the work and just keeps them on the hamster wheel of writing proposals and writing reports. Yeah, I think we need to work on our individual donor strategies, basically.
Why did you specifically speak to wealthy women and not wealthy men? I'm intrigued by that.
You're right. I think we should target wealthy men as well. I mean, I always feel like, especially for cis men, their contribution to the movement should be their money. So absolutely.
I love it. Just write the check and
write the check, give us the money, give Chefs the money. Thank you very much for your service. See you next year.
No, that's an important point because one of the things that I have found in sort of encouraging organizations to try to attract quote unquote more donor dollars is that a lot of these donors not only have a lot of requirements, a lot of policies, but also that they have all this organizing and activism within a Western framework, right? And an organization like Chevs, yes, they want to, challenge oppressive systems. They want to expand safety and foster resilience within LGBTI movements across West Africa. They want to, give safety and dignity to marginalized people. But all of that still has to happen within this West African context. Like, that is the material reality, right? And I think that sometimes with donors, particularly from the West, they don't have any sort of awareness of the intersectional nature of organizations like Chefs, that they are a queer rights and gender rights org, but they are also an African org, right? And so they try to impose this Western framework for organizing and activism that just doesn't work in our context, And so perhaps if people were approaching individual donors that had fewer strings, and particularly donors who were indigenous to our part of the world and had some cultural context, that might be more helpful. But let's say for now, the organizations that predominate the philanthropy space are Western orgs. What do you think they need to know when they are working with organizations like Chefs? Like, what do you wish they knew? What do you think is important for them to keep in mind when they are funding organizations like Chefs? And even for individual donors, like, what is it necessary for the people giving the money to know in order for the work to be done and the work to move forward?
I think what any sort of donor organization should know in funding a youth-led queer organization like Chefs is to allow them plenty of space and time to experiment and figure it out as you go along, and to make mistakes, and not to be punished for those mistakes, but to be supported and just allowed to learn. I think when you're young, you're fearless, you're bold, and that is the time to make the mistakes, And I mean, an organization of young people, you have to make mistakes. It's part of the cause, and you learn by making the mistakes. So that is what I would love donors funded Chefs to do, to give them space to learn, to grow, to innovate, to make mistakes, to fix the mistakes, to be able to, come back and say, hey, we messed up, without a fear of repercussion or, a fear of, oh my God, now the money is drying up forever, and to almost build that into the fund. And like, there should be that expectation, yeah.
I love that, like a discretionary fund,
Absolutely.
for figuring things out, a figure things out fund. That would be
Yes.
lovely.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, that is a great idea. In your time at AWID, and at AWDF, sort of these big gender rights organizations on the continent, you've worked with a lot of sort of young, dynamic orgs like Chefs, right? What have you noticed as recipes for success? And what have you noticed as pitfalls to avoid? Moving forward with the strategic plan, what do you think Chefs could do that works, that you have seen in the space? And what do you think are things to perhaps be aware of as they move forward so they don't make some of the mistakes that others have in the past?
I think a recipe for success is being creative, not being scared to think of doing things differently. I think a recipe for success is really being values aligned. So if you're a queer organization and you say you center women, you say you center trans people, do exactly as you say you will. I think a recipe for success, especially for a young organization, is, actually using that energy, right? And moving. And if part of your tactic is to be out on the streets, be out on the streets. I think what I have seen, and I'm going to sound like an auntie for saying this, but I am an auntie now. I am also owning my auntie status, so I have to say it. What I have seen, I think, that sometimes has stopped young, previously dynamic organizations from thriving is becoming too obsessed with trying to make their workplace their feminist home and community. So your workplace is your workplace. You have to do the work, my people. Your workplace is not the place where you get all your sort of needs and desires met, or where you get to like release all your burdens. That's what you're supposed to have your friends and your family for. Your manager is not your therapist. Your manager is your manager. And I feel like I see sometimes amongst young people the desire for the workplace to meet all of their feminist needs, and I think people have to work intentionally to create feminist community outside of the workplace, So you can work for an organization that's feminist, that, leads with feminist values, but I don't think that should be your feminist home and your feminist community. That feminist home and feminist community needs to be outside of the workplace.
Mm.
I told you it was an anti-comment.
No, I think you might. I think it's an anti-comment that has a lot of merit, because I think that, yes, and you and I talk about this a lot, that we find that a lot of the time in social justice space and activist space, there are so many interpersonal miscommunications and interpersonal conflicts that affect the nature of the work, right? Because people just aren't getting along, because it's people with very big feelings and very good opinions working towards something they feel very strongly about. So there's a certain sort of objectivity and sort of ability to problem solve and ability to resolve conflict that just doesn't happen, and organizations don't focus on conflict resolution, on dealing with class dynamics, on acknowledging difference and diversity, on forcing people or teaching people, to work together within the context of work, And I think you bring up a good point, that part of it perhaps is that people expect the organization that they work for to be their everything without creating enough community outside of the work, And I think you might be onto something, because that actually was my final question. That in this
I
work,
do
that
feel
is,
organizations should deal with cultural issues, right? And build, if it's a feminist organization, a feminist culture, and that usually has to be determined by the staff. But you cannot get caught up in the job of building the culture such that you lose focus on the work, right? If your job has beneficiaries and you're supposed to be working for the beneficiaries, that's what you need to focus on first, And yeah, I feel like the issue is sometimes people want the organization to meet all of their movements, and that's not possible. But I'm also a solo polyamorous, so I also don't think any one person can meet anybody's needs. So
no, I think that is an excellent point. Excellent point. Okay. And it leads into my final question, which is exactly that the work can be daunting. Activist work can be hard, it can be difficult, it can be draining. And so what are some methods that you've seen people use to find moments of connection, to hold space for each other when they're struggling? I mean, how does a young organization like Chevs find and create sites for support and self-care as they do this arduous work against these well-funded, organized, oppressive actors?
yeah, I would say for individuals within Chefs, it is really to hold sacred the time for yourself, to center yourself, to rest, to exercise, to nourish your body with good food, the basics really. I mean, for me, no matter what is going on in my life, I will inevitably go for a walk in the morning, even when the sun is burning hot, and listen to a podcast when I walk, because that time is just time for myself. And it's the way for me to just have some time for me. So this is something that I just recommend to everybody if they can. And I feel like everybody can and should find half an hour in the day for themselves. You can figure out whatever practice works for you. It may be journaling, it may be painting, but just take half an hour, I would say, at the start of your day for yourself before anything else. Everything else can wait. And I feel like if people did that consistently, you even come to work in a good mood. On the days where I don't walk, I notice how ratty I am, right? And if I worked in an office, I would probably be snapping at people just because I haven't gone for a walk. So that's just part of my practice, and that's just something that I've found helpful, and I will encourage people to try it out for themselves.
That is wonderful advice. Thank you so, so much. Thank you so much for the chat, for the advice, for the insight. I'll pass this back on to Faye or someone from the Chefs team so that we can move forward with the all the good stuff they have to tell us about their plan. Thank you.
Thank you,
so much,
Famia.
Famia. Thank you so much, Famia, and thank you so much, Nana, for that conversation. If you just joined us today, we're in a speech chat about building collective power for social justice. And two things stood out for me in this conversation. I think one of the very first one is identifying intersections and harnessing our resources, namely money, skills, resources, and energies to get the work done. And something profound that Nana had mentioned is storytelling and how it radicalizes movements, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And what that does is bring to my mind our mission at Chevs, which is to mobilize and strengthen LGBTQI plus communities for collective action towards equality, freedom, and justice. But the real question now is, how do we do that at Chevs? To answer that, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the co-executive directors at Chevs, Anita Graham and Justin Chidozie, as they unveil to us the strategic plan for Chevs for the year 2024 to 2029. Please, Justin and Anita, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Faye. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Anita. How are you?
Justin, I'm good. You?
Great. I'm doing amazing. I'm quite excited and also feeling a bit
Right?
anxious, but happy to join the conversation and listening to Nana and everyone and seeing everyone in the chat box. Yes, Anita.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Hi, everyone. Again, it is such a pleasure to have you joining us. And we are very, very, very excited to be presenting to you our strategy for the next 5 years, from 2024 to 2029, which we have tagged Building Collective Power, Stronger Movement, Bolder Narratives. Next page, please. To just give a brief introduction about who we are a youth-led feminist collective advancing LGBTQI plus equality across West Africa. We build agency and power with diverse LGBTQI plus youths to shape their own future and boldly confront inequality. Over the past 2 years, we have collectively worked as an organization to scale our work from, we started off as a national organization in Nigeria, but over the past 2 years, we have been intentional about scaling up our work across the West African region. And why was this important for us as a youth organization, a youth core collective? Is because of some of these issues that you see within the numbers that is reflected on your screen. For one, the fact that 6 in 10 persons in West Africa are under the age of 24, representing about 64% of the population. And of the West African countries, 11 out of 16 West African countries have anti-LGBTQI plus laws. And in others, queer persons face systemic discrimination, violence, are at risk of criminalization due to anti-gender rhetoric. And over the past 2 to 3 years, we have seen this really scale up from Nigeria to Ghana to Liberia to Sierra Leone to the Gambia, where there is so much intentional actions going towards the erasure of queer lives and queer identities, and queer organizing is becoming ever so difficult, even with the risk, even within the face of, the shrinking civic spaces for queer organizing, for even human rights organizing as a whole. And we've also recognized the fact that for every $1 spent abroad by US pro-queer organizations, $681 is spent by US anti-queer organizations and nonprofits, which really gives us a picture of, one, how much queer organizations are struggling in the West to resource and to fund their movements. And it also gives a picture to how much the anti-gender, the rights opposition and gender opposition movements are committed to ensuring that, they advance their own agendas and ideologies. We've also discovered that only 1.6% of global queer funding went to West Africa as of 2022. And while global funding has increased, the percentage of funding to the region has reduced. And this really indicates a change in focus and priorities for funders. Prior to these times, the funding that was even coming for queer organizations was really little. And we have seen in the past year a lot of changes that has come through the major funders, the major countries that are funding queer organizing across the world. And unfortunately, West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa are usually at the receiving end of shutdowns and reductions and restrictions in funding. Next, please. Next screen, please. Yes, thank you. So I'm going to pass on to Justin to start off on our strategy pillars.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Anita, for that amazing overview. So after almost a year, not almost, I think over a year of listening,
actually.
of listening and consultations with communities from different part of West Africa, we came up with listened to a lot of things that people are saying, especially young LGBTQ persons are saying, and also some of the problems that we are seeing that Anita has just told us about. First of all, there is the for the first time, West Africa and Africa has like the largest youth population, and majority of these young people identify as LGBTQI or gender diverse persons. And we're also seeing the rising anti-rights and anti-gender rhetorics. We see that, like Anita said, in Ghana, in Nigeria, Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire, and most recently, it's coming up in Sierra Leone, as we've heard. And we're just thinking what could be some actions that we can take to be able to arrive at a better world, right, of advancing our vision. And here are some of the strategic pillars for which our work will be organized under. And for one thing about the work we're looking towards doing in the next 5 years is about centering the power of community, because most organizations or most people believe that, oh, power is just resident in government institutions, or power should be in institutions, but we're currently trying to reframe that around the power inherent in collective, the power inherent in community, the power inherent in people. So we are going to organize our work with a lot of awareness of such powers that people hold to be able to disrupt and push back against oppression. And the first strategic pillars we have is the building cross movements, building cross-movement power and solidarity, because we understand the place of solidarity within organizing, the power of collective, and what it means for people to come together in their diverse identity. We would hold convening spaces that respond to shifts and needs of LGBTQI movement. Unlike the East African and Southern African communities and movements, West Africa is still very much, the movement here is still very much young, and also coupled with language differences and language barriers, it's still very siloed because people don't come together often. I remember one time we were just discussing in the team and someone was like, oh my God, language justice is so expensive. And it is true, it's so expensive. So people would choose not to bring this, both the Francophone and Anglophone communities together. And this is for the removing the movement from coming together and taking collective action. So to respond to this, we would convene spaces for us to reflect about our movement, learn from each other, and also support each other in times of need based on what is happening within the movement. We will institute collective care and solidarity within the framework of LGBTQI movement, meaning that what has happened in Ghana should not be able to replicate itself in another country. And even when it does, those people from Ghana who have survived such issues are able to come to the rescue or some sort of support this new country who is facing this new problem with learnings and experience on how they were able to deal with or overcome this, or even the mistake they made while dealing with theirs. We'll facilitate an ideological collaboration and solidarity between women's rights, feminist, LGBTQI, sex worker, and disability right movement, because we're also seeing the ordering of LGBTQI people amongst within the broader feminist framework, how queer voices are not represented, the sex worker voices are not represented within the broader women's rights and feminist movement. And we are thinking that this is because of the disperse in ideology and how people conceive issues, what they conceive as the threat, and how they conceive crisis, right? This has led us to a place of siloed action and has empowered the anti-right and has further strengthened their hold on the different community, because we are not together, they get to attack us individually. We provide resources and tools and platforms to embolden LGBTQI-led organizations, activists, and collectives. So some of this work we are already doing, and we are hoping that in the next couple of years, we're able to build on this work. So we accompany our communities during emergency crisis situations, crisis, and critical movement moments through a response fund, right? We see how all of these poly crises, how they affect our community and how they often change the trajectory of LGBT organizations. Because if you're looking to make systemic change from a community perspective or in the community, while you're planning your program, planning stakeholder engagement, the next thing there is arbitrary arrest of almost 100 LGBTQI people. There's a court case, there's a bill. So what are the modalities or what are the systems in place for crisis preparedness or crisis response when all of these things happen? So this is also something we're going to be working on and responding to through a community-led and community-hosted response fund that we are hoping to launch. The next pillar on our action is advocacy. We are going to maintain and expand effective advocacy. We're going to leverage key movement moments like we're already doing to advocate for LGBTQI rights in both national, regional, and global spaces. We'll strengthen the capacity of LGBTQI-led organizations and activists on human rights mechanisms and legal accountability systems. We want to be able to support activists to build the momentum and build the technical know-how of how to use human rights mechanisms like the UN, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights Resolution 205, and then also the ECOWAS system to be able to hold their governments accountable and also push for their rights, right? We also advocate for policy reforms at both national levels and advocate for better resourcing and leadership of youth-led movements. Like Nana has said, it's young people or youth-led organization always never gets resource because everyone is hoping for another person to take the first risk or to take the first loop and trust these organizations to prove their worth. So we'll also lend our voice to philanthropic advocacy to make sure that youth-led organizations are better resourced and that donors trust young people to lead and also trust youth-led movements to be able to change systemic oppressions and inequalities. Also learning, many times we've said to ourselves that, oh, Chevs is a learning organization because we are always experimenting, like Nana has said in her work, we are always experimenting. What is this idea? How do we test it? Okay, sorry, I tend to talk a bit fast. For interpretation, I'm slowing down a bit. So we are always talking about how are we learning, what are we learning from these actions that we have taken, what are we learning from this process. So we're going to strengthen knowledge production, voice, and learning. Also, we're going to generate data and insights to strengthen advocacy and movement building knowledge, and we're going to facilitate peer and collective learning among LGBT organizations. Like we already said, we're going to focus on strengthening the movement interaction between Francophone and Anglophone community, connecting and uniting these two West African but diverse and put apart sort of community, that they are able to begin to understand each other and what happens within the context and create a culture of learning and a culture of peer support within our movement. We're also going to through stories, through art, through creative organizing and activism. We're going to document the lived realities of LGBTQI stories because we are seeing how the anti-right movement and the opposition is putting out disinformations and fake narratives about our issues, about our lives in the media, and we do not have the narrative infrastructures to be able to counter all of these narratives. Communities are not empowered, for example, to run response campaigns, to build campaigns that can go really mainstream, right? We want to be able to support communities to build narrative infrastructures, whether in the digital space or in the physical space, which could also include value clarification conversations, and also engaging with high-level high-level politicians, right? So, sorry, something happened. Great. So, we're going to share knowledge and insight with other movements to allow for collective learning and strengthen the broader gender justice ecosystem in West Africa. Again, like I said before, we've noticed that the women's rights, disability justice, abortion rights, reproductive justice movements are all operating in a siloed approach. So what are we sharing from a youth-led LGBTQI perspective that would help support all these other movements to come in solidarity and acknowledge that this is a collective struggle, and essentially acknowledge the common threats and the common enemy that we have, so that we're able to lead and bolden effective advocacy together. And last on these pillars, these strategic pillars would be the sustainability, which is maintain and improve Chefs' capacity to be an effective advocate and movement support organization. This is more like what we want to do within the organization to make sure that we are better placed and better suited to be able to support the community and do all of this work that we have proposed to do, which is we're going to improve our institution capacity. We're going to improve language justice within our system. We're going to center collective care and solidarity in the ways that we work. And we're going to utilize data and evidence from our work and learning from our work to be able to inform partnership and programmatic decision, and also transform Chefs' learning culture by centering movements in our MEL system, right? So these are our 4 pillars of action, which is movement building, learning, advocacy, and sustainability. So I'm going to pass the mic to Anita. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Justin. And we want to be able to achieve all of these things through these themes. We are going to be working around economic justice, sexual and reproductive health and rights, human rights advocacy, safety and security, as well as inclusive feminist futures.
Yeah, also to say that while we are working around these cross-cutting issues is also a way that we're to provide direct services to our communities, from access to SRHR, which is building on the work that we are already doing at Chevs as a youth-led organization, providing support for digital security and physical security for activists that are in danger and LGBTQI right defenders, and also having conversations and capacity strengthening for LGBTQ people on how to lead advocacies in different spaces, and supporting and improving access to more and better economic opportunities for LGBTQI youths across the region. And yeah, so these 5 cross-cutting themes are how our work and the strategic pillars are going to interact with the community through some direct services and advocacy effort for the work that we do. And we talked about, during Nana's conversation, she talked about intersections of work. We're also looking at how technology, the growing technological landscape, is influencing and affecting the material existence of LGBTQI people. Last year, we were at the Commission on the Status of Women, and Chefs has made a delivery at the UN General Assembly around the impact of artificial intelligence and algorithmic bias on trans women and gender diverse communities, and how it's currently exposing queer people to more harm and misgendering and all of that. We're also been involved around value clarification with healthcare providers across the region around how they interact with trans people seeking healthcare, LGBTQ people in general seeking healthcare, and what are some of these biases. So we have lots of work that we're already doing around this area, especially like the Tech for Pride that we're using to empower LGBTQI youths with tech skills and support them to participate in the growing tech ecosystem, while also assessing economic opportunities and also becoming creators of narrative, because we believe that the representative of those who use tech should be a reflection of those who build them, right? So we would not want LGBTQI people to miss out in the growing ecosystems of economic empowerment and the rest of them. And inclusive feminist features, we have our programs, our Yemoja Feminist program, which some of you may be aware of, where it's a cross-movement fellowship for young feminists to grapple with the nuances of feminism and also understand the feminist praxis around intersectional justice, because we bring diverse young women together from the disability rights, reproductive justice, sex work, and LGBTQI movement in this 1 year-long fellowship, which has been supported by some of our partners in the last couple of years. So we're going to be leading you through our theory of change so that we can wrap up. I can already see lots of people, sorry, the timekeeper telling me that. So yes, our theory of change, how does change happen? How do we achieve change, Anita?
Okay, so yes, our theory of change is based on 5 key assumptions. One is that gender and sexual diversity has long existed in West Africa, and promoting LGBTQI+ rights challenges the colonial legacy that erased these identities, as discrimination and violence stems from colonial histories and require dismantling lingering power dynamics, racism, and cultural erasure. We recognize that one of the lasting impacts of colonial structures and practices within the West African region is the erasure of our identities, of our histories, of our being as queer persons within our West African context. And based on that, we recognize that this is a theory, this is an idea that we need to intentionally begin to correct. We also recognize that LGBTI+ queer persons across West Africa experience compounded oppression from gender-based violence, ableism, criminalization, and economic marginalization. We recognize that youth-led collective action is key to driving change, as our movements challenge harmful narratives, shift societal perceptions, and push for policy reforms. We believe that a feminist gender transformative approach is vital to queer liberation across West Africa. And we also believe that advocacy at all levels strengthens cross-movement solidarity, shifts narratives, and fosters legal reforms that support queer liberation in West Africa. Based on this, next, please. Based on this, we are going to do this through 4 approaches: movement building, advocacy, narrative change, and sustainability. And our strategic objectives are: 1, to build cross-movement power and solidarity, to maintain and expand effective advocacy, to strengthen knowledge production, voice and learning, and to maintain and improve Chevs' capacity to be an effective movement support organization. Next, please. Our ultimate outcome is to achieve stronger, more united West African LGBTQI+ movements. And this is going to look like a resilient LGBTQI+ movement with a shared understanding of threats and a collective vision for a just world, improved resourcing, legal protection, and access to justice for LGBTQI+ communities, availability of data and stories on LGBTQI+ lived realities and movements in West Africa, as well as increased organizational resilience and effectiveness in advocacy efforts, resulting in sustained impact and enhanced ability to respond to emerging challenges. Also, our impact would be that queer movements exist within a robust, interconnected ecosystem that is well-resourced, knowledgeable, and actively collaborates to dismantling systems of oppression, that we would experience more inclusive policies and decriminalization of LGBTQI+ identities, that there would be improved... Sorry, my screen went...
It's okay, Anita.
Yeah.
Did you
Okay, I couldn't find it for a second. Okay,
you have it now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
No, actually, please, can you take over?
Okay. It's okay. So with our impact, by the time we do this work, this is like the big impacts that we are looking at our work having in the next couple of years. And some of these impacts, like you already know, it's quite ambitious, but we would work to ensure that we achieve this impact and that we meet some of this goal. Like Anita has said, we would, through our work, we would begin to see more inclusive policies and decriminalization, improve social perception through our narrative change work that we intend to do. There would be improved positive social narrative and perception about LGBTQI people, which would definitely lead to acceptance and equality. Because just like South Africa and the US has showed us that policy often do not translate, or laws do not often translate to societal attitude or impact societal attitude, right? And we're going to have a well-informed community and advocacy landscape where most decisions are driven by evidence and data and insight and stories of lived realities. Because unlike different regions, again, West Africa lags behind in LGBTQI stories and data and insight. So we'll do our best to be able to harvest this and put these stories out, support communities to create these stories and also express these stories in different forums and in different spaces. And we're going to have improved institutional practice and capacities and resources for creating lasting change. And we're looking at what our utopia would look like, which is to have a liberated reality for LGBTQ communities in West Africa, because we're not just looking at equality, but we're looking at liberation, where communities are liberated from the shackles of colonization, criminalization of body, descent, and sexuality, and all of that, and where people can be able to express themselves in a whole and not be part of a community and be part of the community, right? So this is what we hope that we're doing. And like Anita have said in the past slides, we're going to approach our work through the 3 pillars, which is movement building. We want to be able to build strong movements, united and resilient movements, this movement will then lead advocacy for this change, and then we're going to ultimately see narrative change within the region, or the narrative begin to change within the region that we do our work in. So thank you so much. I think this is the last slide. Yes, we're just going to talk our vision. So we will do this through mobilize and strengthen LGBTQ communities for collective action towards achieving equality, freedom, and justice through movement building, advocacy, and narrative change. So thank you so much. I think that's like all for the presentation of our strategic plan in the next couple of years. So you've learned about our plan, what we plan to do, how we plan to strengthen movement, and how we plan to build community, and how we plan to support our work. So thank you so much, everyone. We pass the mic back to Anita.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Justin. And that is, in summary, what we hope to achieve over the next 5 years. We know that this is a huge dream, but we recognize the fact that we're not going to be doing it alone. The whole idea of our strategy is to really harness the power of the collective, harness the power of the community. And because we recognize that we work at the intersection of a number of movements, from the queer rights movement to the sex workers movement to the disability rights movement, as well as the women's rights movement, we recognize that there is so much that needs to be done within the West African continent that we can achieve, which is why we are inviting you to buy into our strategy, to buy into our vision, to support the movement. And like Nana has said, we need to begin to find the point in which we all unite. We have, just like the anti-rights and the anti-gender movement are able to find their points of congruence and work from there as a unit, we also need to be able to replicate that within our movement. And so we thank you so much again for joining us, and we hope you stay till the end of this. Over to you, Faye. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Justin. I particularly love going through with the strategic plan and all of those things. As someone who started off their career in media, I am particularly looking forward to how the key pillar on narrative change is something that we're going to achieve in the next 5 years in terms of documenting stories from our communities to ensure that narrative change is possible. And I'm going to come to you, Esther, very quickly. Amongst these pillars that we are focusing in the next 5 years, what are you most excited about?
So for me, amongst the three pillars, I'm more excited about the advocacy and movement building aim of this our three pillars, because I feel like they both go hand in hand. With advocacy, you build movement, and it's important actually for the work that we do to advocate, to build movement, to form communities that we've seen so far in the years of advocacy, in the years of activism, that we've done a lot of work in silos. And it's important right now with the building anti-rights movement that we need to come together as a movement, as a collective, as people, as activists, working together for this same goal, to work together and build this movement. And I'm also calling on everyone here, as we all reflect on these three pillars, I want us to also think of our roles in bringing this vision to life, because understanding that Chevs as an organization, we cannot do this alone. It requires the contribution from all our voices, our skills, our resources to achieve these goals. So it's important for us to work together, for us to partner. And while talking about partnership, partnership is very important to us. It is one of the things that, even as an organization, within ourselves as colleagues, we are looking. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, 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 we can hear you now.
Okay, I thought I was kicked out for a bit. So for us as an organization, partnership is very important to us. And through our journey as an organization, we have had an incredible collaboration with the team at Purposeful. This is why I would love to introduce Lysel Baker, the Director of Resourcing Resistance at Purposeful, to share a message from Purposeful to us on this day.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Faye. I'm going to have my camera on for now, but I had a wonderful few days with Justin in Cape Town, where I'm based, last week. It was beautiful and sunny. And now today we have the greatest storm. And so my internet is a little bit patchy. And so I want to just, I'm going to switch my camera off just to make sure that I don't drop on this call, but just to say hi and so everyone can see my face before I switch my camera off. Thanks so much. So just to say a little bit about me, my name is Liesel. I am based in Cape Town. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the director of grant making at Purposeful. Purposeful is a feminist movement building hub for adolescent girls, for young women, and LGBTQI plus young people, rooted in Africa and working all over the world. And it's such an absolute pleasure to be on this call with you all and to celebrate our Chevs family and the launch of your incredible strategic plan. And I must say, your incredible new graphics and look, it is stunning. And this, I guess, like for us and for Purposeful, this moment is not just like a celebration of like this document or a roadmap, but it's really a testament to the strength, the resilience, and the vision of a movement that's really transforming the landscape for LGBTQI plus activists and communities in West Africa. Purposeful's connection with Chevs really began at the 10th Africa Conference on Sexual Health and Rights that Purposeful hosted in Sierra Leone a couple of years ago now, where Chevs really shared powerful reflections with us on like the exclusions faced by queer individuals, from sex workers, of those with disabilities, even within feminist spaces. And it was really through these conversations and kind of the start of relationships within the team with Chevs that we really, like, we knew we deeply resonated with Chevs' vision, and came together to partner on the Yamoja Fellowship. And really what began as a funding relationship has grown into a partnership rooted in solidarity and trust. Chevs has really shown us what's possible when movements embrace the kind of full diversity of our communities. And it's just been a privilege to be part of this space today, and in partnering with Chevs as an opportunity to really honor, especially today, to kind of honor the courage and care and collective power that they all and this like team brings to this work. And so just kind of in honoring that, I just want to take a little moment to pause and reflect on the work of like the Umoja Fellowship, which Chevs really led with such boldness, amplifying voices of young queer feminists and really bridging critical gaps in solidarity and resources. And the fellowship has been key in creating space for the growth of a movement of West African feminists, really rooted in Pan-African feminist and queer ideology. And it's for Purposeful, this was through this fellowship, we really had an opportunity to collaborate on a core aspect of our shared vision, like equipping LGBTQI+ young people with knowledge, with tools, and collective power to challenge systems of oppression, through the processes around consciousness raising, and really to better understand and navigate structural injustices while imagining and building liberated futures. And it's just one of the examples for us of like the real transformative impact of Chevs' work. In fact, 5 of our staff members also managed, were really lucky to participate in this fellowship. And the experience profoundly impacted their journeys as young feminists. One of the participants, Yatiana, she reflected on her journey of kind of self-discovery and feminist awakening. And according to her, this fellowship provided a sanctuary for her to make sense of systemic oppression, to challenge ingrained gender norms, and to help her embrace feminism as a political and personal identity. And throughout the presentation of your strategic plan, I guess what's really struck me the most is the clarity of Chevs' vision for the road ahead. Like, they're not simply responding to crisis or dismantling oppressive narratives. They're really imagining and creating space to inspire collective action and to deepen connections within and across movements, and the condition for a future where freedom and justice are foundational truths. And so I guess that maybe just in closing, is like, to my Chevs family, like today we celebrate like your courage, your vision, like, and we're really standing in awe of your leadership and relentless pursuit of liberation. Like, your vision invites us all to dream bigger, to act bolder, and like your commitment to building collective power really recognizes that movements thrive when they're deeply interconnected, when they honor the multiplicities of identities, and like, are really are able to unapologetically challenge systems of oppression. And so your strategic plan is like maps far more than a path forward. You're also like really loudly issuing a call to all of us, to funders, to allies, to collaborators, to really lean in, to listen deeply, and to invest boldly and consistently in the work that transforms lives and communities. And so we're so grateful for your leadership, for the courage, for your unwavering belief in collective action, and that your work really inspires me and inspires all of us at Purposeful to evolve. And so to our friends and our fierce comrades, just to end this is to say that we are so very thrilled to be with you alongside you in this journey. And I hope that my connection has stayed strong for this, but thank you so much, Esther. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you to Purposeful for your support in the work that we do as Chevs. It is an example of the power of partnership in advancing community-centered approaches and intersectional programming. Speaking of intersectional programming, I would want to call on my colleagues, Marlene and Jamila. They would be sharing actionable ways we can embrace intersectionality and movement support in our work. So over to you, Marlene and Jamila. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, everyone, for still staying till now, listening to us speak plenty English. So you have listened to my colleagues share what we want to do and how we want to do it. I think what I'm going to share on now is the why. Why intersectional programming? Why is that our approach? Why is that important to us? And what is informing our priority areas? Our identity, first of all, as African, queer, and youth-led ensures that we have a very intimate relationship with the communities we program for and work with, the communities we serve, which also means we are at very vantage points to understand deeply what our intersectional problems are, what the challenges are, and how to work around them. From inception, Chefs has always been very particular about working beyond decriminalization. Also, because we know that our issues go beyond sexual orientation and gender identities. So we have been very strategic in thinking around issues that affect our day-to-day lives while we work on the bigger legal landscape to ensure that equality is something that is not just a utopia or a dream. We also know that we have our day-to-day lives. We live within a system, we exist within a system, and we navigate the exclusion that exists within that system. That means democracy is our problem. Climate change is our problem. We're invested in the healthcare system because it is our problem. Peace and security is our problem. So our issues were not a monolith, and we recognize that because also while we use communities to describe our work, we also know that behind that compound term are individuals and real lives, and every action and inaction that we take impacts someone's life somewhere. So we're very, very intentional we want to know how crisis presents within our communities, right? Beyond the mainstream definition, we want to know how these things affect our daily lives. And we want to program in a way that everything we do can make living better, despite the context we live in. Our new strategy is a roadmap that takes all of this into consideration and brings it up under a technical umbrella where we're actively able to do meaningful work and guides our cross-issue and cross-movement programming generally. We address, our approach is also regional. And because of this, we recognize the barriers Justin mentioned earlier around language injustice, the language barriers that we would face as a team working across different countries regionally. But that is also why we have a dynamic team that is not just restricted to one language. And with our 5-year strategic plan, we also plan to increase our reach to ensure more language diversity. We are also enabled with a team that is also very sensitive and understanding, deeply embedded within the movements we work with. So while with our diversified workforce, we understand that we are not just working on communities from the outside, but we have competent people who are working from the inside with that lived experience. And one other thing we do that is the why that influences how we work and how we approach solutions, is recognizing that those of us working and implementing are not the only experts in the room. We recognize that young people everywhere within our communities, they have the power to influence advocacies. They understand their needs better than anybody else can articulate. And they are also capable of determining what solutions can be possible. So we do a lot of consultations, we do documentation, and that is why research is also a big component of our programming to guide us on what our priorities should be. And this is why need analysis for all our projects. Also, it's an ongoing process that does not end when we're implementing any project that we start. It defines how we change our priorities, if something needs to be switched, what our relationship are to the current context of wherever we're implementing, and also defines our security and safety programming. Also, our commitment to a fully inclusive LGBTQI plus movement means that we also recognize that some parts of our movements have historically been marginalized and excluded even within our movement. We're talking about sex workers, we're talking about young LGBTQI plus people, we're talking about queer people with visible and non-visible disabilities. So we're also very particular about looking at these intersections and ensuring that the work we do takes brings everybody together, that nobody is left behind. And disability justice is something we're very interested in. It's integral to our work, not just for programming, but also in practice, for the way we implement, the way we engage, because beyond the fact that we have queer people who are persons with disabilities, we also understand that we live in a very ableist society, that anything that is not the normal within what is socially accepted as normal within our society is already excluded from access to basics. So we're very conscious of that. And this also puts the disability justice and the queer justice movement hand in hand in the kind of factors that has historically and still continue to influence what kind of injustice we face and have to fight against. So that is why we cannot do the work we do without prioritizing disability justice as one of our key areas and key components for our work. Meaningful partnerships and continuous feedback, again, that is very central, because it is something that is a process that never ends. However, what is key to our work also is youth partnership. Youth leadership is very essential in our mission to challenge ingrained norms. We recognize that not only are young people are not just impacted by issues in a different way, but they are also historically and even today always the loudest to lead for change. Right? When you bring young people in the room, if something needs to be said, young people would be at the forefront, taking the lead. Young people have shown incredible rapid response strategies to crisis. If we look at the political context of our region across the countries in West Africa, whenever there is a massive or collective fight against injustice across any social justice issue, whether it's security, even within the mainstream, young people are always in front of fighting oppression. And that is why it is very paramount for us that youth leadership should be central to all we do. And just to end, like Audrey said, there is nothing as a single issue, because we do not live single issue. We do not live single issue lives. And this is something that we embody in our work. We embody when we are ideating on what our strategies should be, on what our programming should be, on what our key areas are, and even how we do the work that we do. So I'll be passing on to Jamila to share more about how we get this done. Hi, Jamila.
Hi, Marlon. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you everyone for joining the call. I think we're all on this call deeply excited for the next 5 years. So I hope that you are as well. And to continue what Marlon has already presented around the importance of intersectionality, I think it's also important to make a note around movement solidarity and support, because we find ourselves in a world where oppressive systems seek to divide us. But at Chevs, as decolonial feminists, we see past these tactics, and we do recognize that the struggles that we face are interconnected. So Chevs' solidarity work is deeply rooted in the reality that injustices faced by queer folks are inseparable from the broader social political structures that also harm other marginalized groups. The struggles for land rights, gender justice, disability rights, workers' rights, queer rights, these are all intrinsically linked. And this is why Chevs believes in leveraging our collective power to address the root causes of these injustices. We're hoping to promote this shared vision of liberated futures, which reimagine everything from economics, racial and gender hierarchies, and relationship to land and one another. But this requires us to challenge these harmful narratives that isolate movements from one another. And we're hoping that by documenting and sharing the lived experiences of our communities, that we can shift some of these harmful dominant narratives that limit our collective ability to dream. And we hope that we can also inspire a deeper sense of interconnectedness among social justice movements. While we recognize that LGBTQI A plus feminist and decolonial and youth-led movements are at the forefront of many struggles, as Marlene has mentioned, that they do face criminalization, exclusion, and violence on a daily basis. So our movement support work is dedicated to strengthening their capacity in their ability to advocate for their rights, build collective power and safety, particularly, and create a transformative change in this increasingly hostile environment. That was also highlighted by Nana for us earlier. So our movement support is particularly important in the coming 5 years. As to reflect again the conversation with Nana, we predict a sustained funding and support for these anti-rights actors and agendas. And this rise of anti-rights rhetoric and violence has created a crisis landscape in our region, which movements will need adequate resources and capacity to confront. And in this critical moment, Chevs is committed to implementing not only internal safety measures, but also crisis response strategies to support our movement peers. And our programming has shifted to emphasize safety and security and collective care trainings, as well as tech navigation and innovation skills training to support digital activism. Pooling and distributing a crisis fund is also part of how Chevs is reimagining movement resourcing to promote trust-based funding, because we've seen that funding and programming for West Africa has drastically reduced, which again exacerbates the impact of these anti-rights tactics by depriving liberation movements of the resources that they need to respond. We need to build better resourcing systems, particularly to sustain LGBTQI plus groups in the region who are often the face of these anti-rights attacks. So we hope that through advocacy and research efforts, funders will reassess their funding priorities to respond to this ongoing crisis in West Africa. But generally, over the next 5 years, our strategy is clear, which is to deepen our support for LGBTQI plus feminist and youth-led movements, while we're simultaneously building solidarity with other groups that are fighting against injustices. We're committed to creating safe and inclusive spaces where activists can come together, share resources, and collectively strategize. This includes the convenings mentioned earlier, which are responsive to the needs of activists. And we're hoping that they can foster genuine solidarity across movements, because now more than ever, we need to come together across identities, movements, and borders. We're facing a world where forces of oppression are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and our movements are becoming stronger and more resilient in response. So we invite you all today to join us in building this world where everyone can live safely in dignity and in freedom. And as Maya Angelou said, the truth is no one of us is free until everybody is free. So we hope that you will join us in this call to creating our free, liberated world. And I'll leave it at that. I'll pass it back over to Esther.
Hi, I'm back again. Thank you so much, Marlene and Jamila, for the insight on how and why we are going to push this movement. It is important to note that intersectionality is not just a framework, it is a commitment to understanding and addressing the unique challenges faced by individuals and communities at the margin. We all have a role to play in building inclusive movements and truly reflect this commitment. I'm going to also call on Faye to share his thoughts about these conversations that has gone on.
So I think that it's really great to bear all of these things in mind. Our work is going to be more progressive when we work in intersections and make it more practical, not just as lip service, but matching it with concrete actions. We have had a lot of conversations today. I'm super excited that this strategic launch has finally happened. It's been a long time coming, and here we are finally looking into the things that Chevs has in plan for the next 5 years. At this point, I'm going to be passing to Justin for a call to action, as well as closing remarks to just round up everything that we've been talking about for the past hour. Justin, over to you, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Faye and Esther, for moderating this. Esther is our programs associate, and Fejiro is our programs lead for community engagement. And the people you just heard for is Marlene Oluchi, our advocacy lead, and Jamila, our Francophone program lead. And we're very excited to be working with such an amazing team. I am particularly excited to be working with everyone at Chevs. And a quick shout out to Lydia in the background. Hi, the communications lead for their work in launching our new brand. If you have not visited our website, please do well to visit our website. And you can also learn more about our strategy on our website, and also learn about our theory of change, and also how to support our work. So like you've heard from everyone, not to keep you more, because we just want to close, or we are right at 3:30, an hour 30 minutes that we have scheduled for this call. And we're very happy that you have stayed and you have listened and you have held us together for this conversation and this lunch, and we are very grateful for that. And we look forward to more conversation around partnership, conversation around collaboration, and how we can both come together to achieve this vision, because this is not just Chef's work, like you've heard from my colleague. It's what role is every one of us playing to be able to achieve this vision for our collective community, for our community of people, right? So this strategy, if you have listened, it's very centered around collective, community, and power. How do we harness all of these things together to be able to achieve our desired outcome? Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this call, and we wish you a very great rest of your day.
And just before we finally wrap up, I want to encourage every single person to join us in our work at Chevs to be able to create a safer, more inclusive society, and also engage with our initiatives. I think Anita has something to say. You can quickly go, please.
Oh no, I was actually just going to tell us to say thank you to everyone who joined, and to wish everyone a good week, good month, good year as we wrap up the year. So.
All right, thank you so much, Anita. We just want to extend our gratitude to all of our speakers, our partners, our attendees, funders, and everyone alike. Thank you so much for joining us for this exciting event, and we're looking forward to what we have in store for you in the next 5 years. Esther, any last words?
You said thank you, and I think we said a lot of thank you today, and we are so grateful for everyone that has shared their time with us. It's been a lovely 1 hour 30 minutes of sharing our dreams and visions with everybody in our community. We also encourage everybody to check out our social media pages on Instagram, Chevs_org, on LinkedIn, Chefs Square Youth Collective, and our website. Our website is so beautiful. I think everybody should go there, check our website, chefs.org. We have a lot of work that we have been working on for the past 1 year that we want to share with you. So come to our website, look at our programs, look at how you can tap into what we are doing, partner with us, collaborate with us, and also fund Chefs. So yes, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Let's keep building a collective power. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.